I canceled her card. Now she'll have to call me and beg. The words, spoken by my son, sliced through the quiet afternoon air, a poison dart aimed at a heart that had only ever beaten for him. My name is Elora, and I am 68 years old. For my entire existence, I had clung to a single, unassailable truth. A mother's love is elemental, a force that cannot be broken or bargained with. I believed that the sacrifices made in the shadows of parenthood were seen, were valued, that family was the last sacred sanctuary in a broken world. I was wrong, and that profound miscalculation was a chasm that nearly swallowed me whole. It all began its insidious unraveling 2 years ago, when Julian, my only child, the boy I had raised from the dust of my widowhood, announced his intention to marry Claire. I convinced myself, overjoyed. After watching him drift through a sea of fractured relationships, he had seemingly found an anchor. Claire was a wisp of a girl, an elementary school teacher with a shy smile and a reservoir of respect that seemed, at the time, genuine. I saw in her the daughter I never had, the final piece of a portrait of familial bliss I had been painting in my mind for decades. When my husband, Arthur, was stolen from me by a sudden, vicious heart attack 7 years prior, I learned to manufacture strength. I had to. I was an accountant for 40 years, a woman who understood ledgers and long-term investments. I saved with a grim discipline, securing a life of modest independence. My home, the one Arthur and I had filled with laughter, was mine. 2 small apartments, purchased as investments, provided a steady murmur of income. I was not wealthy. I lived a life absent of luxury, but it was a life of dignity, a life of peace, or so I believed. Julian was always indulged. I see that now. Perhaps it was my own failing, a desperate attempt to fill the void Arthur left, to overcompensate with material things for an absence that was spiritual. I financed his entire education. I bought his first car. I provided the down payment for his fledgling consulting business. I called it investing in his future, the natural duty of a family. When he and Claire got engaged, I didn't hesitate. I bled my savings of $15,000 for the venue, the food, the dress, a perfect day, a start free from debt. This was my first mistake. After the wedding, Julian approached me with that incandescent smile, the one he had polished since childhood, the one he deployed when he wanted something. "Mom," he began, "Claire and I are looking, but the rents in Seattle are just insane. What about your place on Chestnut Avenue?" I saw the hope in his eyes, the reflection of the boy who used to ask for a bedtime story, and I was powerless. I normally rented that unit for $800. I told him $300, just enough to cover the building's expenses. But with one condition, I added, the accountant in me surfacing. "A formal contract, all legal." He laughed, hugged me, and called me the best mother in the world. We signed the papers. Claire was radiant, thanking me with flowers and promises of family dinners. It seemed perfect. The first 6 months were a gentle glide. The rent was paid. They came every Sunday for my slow-cooked pot roast. Claire would call for recipes. I felt essential. I would sit in my green velvet armchair, the one Arthur used to read in, sipping tea from the white porcelain cup my own mother had left me, and I would watch the world through the window, feeling a quiet, profound sense of meaning. Then, the subtle fractures began, the hairline cracks that a mother senses but wills herself to ignore. Julian started arriving late for Sunday dinners. Then, not at all. A text. "Swamped with work, Mom." When he did appear, he was distant, his eyes glued to the phantom glow of his phone, his answers monosyllabic. Claire's calls became infrequent, her voice stretched thin, a wire humming with a tension I couldn't name. One Sunday, they both came. I noticed it immediately. Julian was wearing a new watch, a heavy, ostentatious piece of Swiss engineering that screamed its 4-figure price tag. Claire had a designer handbag slung over her chair, one of those accessories that cost more than my monthly mortgage. A cold prickle of unease tightened in my chest. "That's a beautiful watch, Julian," I commented, forcing a casual tone. "A gift?" He smiled, a smug lifting of his lips, angling his wrist. Bought it myself, Mom. Business is exploding. Things are going really, really well. I nodded, my own smile a brittle facade. Something didn't add up. If business was so good, why were they still in my apartment, paying a pittance? Why were they not building their own life, one commensurate with this sudden, invisible success? I swallowed my doubts. I would not be the intrusive mother, the critical mother-in-law. But the puzzle pieces kept appearing, dropped by a careless, cruel hand. 2 weeks later, a phone call froze the blood in my veins. An automated message from my bank informing me of a rejected charge, insufficient funds. I hung up, my mind reeling. I checked my banking app, my fingers trembling. My checking account, the one I kept fortified with $5,000 for emergencies, held a balance of just over $200. I scrolled through the transactions, a wave of vertigo sweeping over me. Transfers I never made. Payments to high-end electronics stores, exorbitant restaurant tabs, a luxury clothing boutique. All in the last 2 months. All ranging from $500 to $1,500. The room began to tilt. I called the bank. Mrs. Delgado. The executive's voice was professionally detached. These movements were authorized with your additional debit card, the one registered to a Mr. Julian Delgado as an authorized user. The air left my lungs. I remembered. Years ago, when he was in college, for emergencies. That was over 15 years ago. I never dreamed he still possessed it. I never imagined. Can I cancel that authorization? I managed to ask, my voice a dry rasp. Of course, ma'am, but you'll need to come in person with a valid ID. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, staring at the floral wallpaper, feeling the betrayal settle in my stomach like a block of ice. My son. My son was stealing from me. There was no other word. He was stealing from me, and he couldn't even grant me the dignity of asking. I took a breath. I poured a glass of water. I would not confront him. Not yet. I needed to be certain. I needed to understand the full scope of the abyss that had just opened at my feet. That afternoon, I went to the bank. I canceled Julian's authorization. I changed every password, and I requested a complete, itemized report of all transactions for the past 6 months. What I discovered was a nightmare rendered in ink. Julian had siphoned nearly $8,000. $8,000 of my money, earned through my work, saved through my sacrifice. The nausea returned as I saw the list, the watch, the handbag, a vacation to Miami for him and Claire, all on me, all behind my back. I placed the papers in an envelope, locked them in my desk, and I waited. I held onto a sliver of hope that he would come to me, confess, explain. That hope died 3 days later. It was a Thursday afternoon, just past 4. Claire had called that morning, her voice sounding genuinely weak, asking if I could bring over some soup, claiming a stomach bug. I knocked on their apartment door. No answer, but I heard voices. I used my owner's key, calling out as I entered, "Claire, it's me, Alora. I brought the soup." Silence. I walked toward the living room, and then I heard it. Julian's voice, emanating from the small room he used as an office. He was on the phone. And his tone, it was mocking, arrogant, laced with a cruelty I had never heard. "No, bro, I'm telling you, it's handled," he said, punctuated by a short, sharp laugh. I canceled the extra card I had for my mom before she even noticed how much I'd spent. The old lady barely checks her statements. And you know the best part? I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. "Now that she cut my access," he continued, his voice dripping with sick satisfaction, "I canceled her primary credit card. I have copies of all her documents." Made the call to the bank, pretending to be her financial advisor. Done. Now, if she wants to get her card back, she'll have to call me. She'll have to beg. She'll have to understand she can't treat me like a kid anymore. It's time she learns who's in control here. I stood petrified on the other side of that door. The floor fell away, the air sucked from the room. My son, my only child, the life I had dedicated myself to, was not just stealing from me. He was hunting me. He was planning my humiliation, my subjugation, and he was laughing. I backed away, silently. I left the soup on the counter. I drifted out of the apartment, down the stairs, my legs hollow. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, the world outside blurred and silent. The tears didn't come until I was home, until the door was locked behind me, until I allowed the full, crushing weight of the betrayal to land. I collapsed into my green velvet armchair, and I wept. I wept as I had not wept since Arthur's funeral. I cried for the son I thought I knew, who was, in fact, a chilling stranger. I cried for the years of sacrifice he had just trampled into the mud. I cried for my own bottomless naivety. But then, as the sobs subsided, something else rose in their place. A cold, sharp clarity, and rage that did not burn, but froze. I looked at the white porcelain teacup in my hand, the one my mother had given me, the one that had survived decades. I, too, had survived. I had survived death. I had survived solitude. I had built a life from scratch, and I would not be dismantled by my own child. If Julian wanted to play a game of control, he was about to discover that his mother was not the fragile old woman he imagined. I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, the accountant returning. I reviewed every document, the lease, the property deeds, the bank accounts, and as I read, a plan formed. Cold, meticulous, final. He wanted to make me beg. He was about to learn a lesson he would never, ever forget, because the apartment he lived in so comfortably for $300 a month was entirely in my name. And the contract I had insisted on, had a very specific clause. Immediate cancellation of the contract in case of non-compliance or inappropriate conduct by the tenant. I smiled. It was the first time in days, a small, bitter, and terribly determined smile. At 8 a.m. on Friday, I called Marcus Thorne, my lawyer for over 20 years. "Elora," he answered, his voice warm. "A surprise to hear from you so early. Is everything all right?" I took a steadying breath. "Marcus, I need you to review a lease agreement and tell me my exact rights for immediate cancellation." A pause. "Problems with a tenant?" His voice sharpened. "All business." "Yes," I replied, the word catching in my throat. "With my son, Julian." Marcus, bless him, didn't ask questions. He told me to email the contract and be in his office at 3 p.m. I sat across from his mahogany desk as he read every line. Finally, he looked up, his expression a mix of pity and professional resolve. "Elora, I am so sorry you are enduring this, but legally, your position is ironclad. This clause for immediate termination for justifiable cause is your path. If you can prove he engaged in fraudulent conduct or misused your confidential information." I slid the envelope across the desk. The bank statements, the itemized list of charges. He reviewed each paper. "This is more than enough," he said grimly. "He used an old bank authorization to access your funds without current consent. That is a profound breach of trust. Legally, it's family fraud. You have solid grounds." He explained the process. "A legal eviction notice. 72 hours. It would have to be delivered by a judicial officer." "Are you sure, Elora?" Marcus asked gently. "He's your son. Once you pull this trigger, there is no going back." I looked out his window at the Seattle skyline, gray and indifferent. I thought of Julian's laugh. Now she'll have to beg. "I am absolutely sure," I said, my voice a stranger's, cold and clear. "Proceed. I want the eviction executed exactly on Monday at 6 p.m. While Marcus drafted the documents, I called my bank. I reported the identity theft regarding my credit card. It took 2 hours, but I regained control, locking Julian out permanently. On Monday morning, I sat in my car across the street from Chestnut Avenue. I watched the judicial officer knock. Claire opened the door, received the envelope, and her face crumpled as she read it. I felt a pang of guilt for her, but it was collateral damage in a war I did not start. I started the car and drove home. Over the next 3 days, My phone became a weapon against me. 16 calls from Julian, all rejected. A barrage of texts. Mom, I urgently need to talk to you. I don't understand. Please answer. I deleted them. He came to my house Tuesday night, pounding on the door for 20 minutes. Mom, I know you're in there. Open up. We need to talk. I sat in my green velvet armchair. I sipped my tea from the white porcelain cup. I listened to his pleas, and I did not move. He wanted me to beg. Instead, I was forcing him to. On Wednesday, Claire called, her voice shattered. Alora, please. I know he did something wrong. He told me everything. He used your money. I didn't know. I swear. I thought his business. Please, give us a chance. My resolve flickered. But then I remembered the handbag, the Miami vacation. She had enjoyed the fruits of his theft. Claire, I said calmly, my decision is final. The lease terminates on Friday at 6 p.m. You have until then to vacate. But where will we go? She sobbed. We don't have any money saved. Julian says his business is having problems. He doesn't even have enough for a deposit. It confirmed everything. The success was a facade, built on my stolen savings. That, I replied, is not my problem. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. I felt monstrous, but I reminded myself, I did not create this situation. He did. Friday dawned gray and heavy. I spent the day in a haze of tense preparation, cleaning an already spotless house, organizing my files. At 5:45 p.m., my phone lit up. Julian. I rejected it. He called again. Rejected. A text message appeared. Mom, please just give me 10 minutes. I made a mistake. I admit it. But you can't do this. We are family. I laughed. A dry, bitter sound. Now we were family. At 6 p.m. on the dot, a message from Marcus arrived. It was a photo. The apartment. Boxes piled high. Suitcases by the door. Claire was a heap on the sofa, weeping. And Julian. Julian wasn't there. Marcus's text followed. He ran out 30 minutes ago, shouting that he was going to fix this, that his mother couldn't do this to him. I knew exactly where he was going. 20 minutes later, a car screeched to a halt outside my home. The pounding on my door was frantic, desperate. Mom, open the door. We need to talk now. I rose from my armchair. I smoothed my clothes. I walked to the door, each step a deliberate, measured reclamation of my power. I opened it. He stood there, a mess of fury and panic. What the hell are you doing? He shouted, storming past me. How can you kick us out? On the street, I'm your son. I watched him, searching his face for a single flicker of remorse. There was nothing, only indignation, the outrage of the victim. Come in, I said softly, though he already had. I returned to my green velvet armchair, clasping my hands in my lap. Sit down, Julian. My calm infuriated him. Explain this. Why did you cancel the contract? Why won't you answer my calls? Claire is destroyed. Sit down, I repeated, my voice edged with steel. He slumped onto the sofa opposite me. What do you want? He spat. If it's money, we can arrange a payment plan. But you can't just make us homeless. I picked up the red folder from the side table. Do you remember? I began, my voice quiet. When you were 10? And you were accused of stealing money from the school office? He blinked, thrown. What does that have to do with? Yes. And you defended me. I did. I nodded. I defended you because I trusted you. Because that's what mothers do. I rose and walked to the window. For years, Julian, I defended you. When your father said I was spoiling you. When your teachers said you were irresponsible. I ignored them all, because I thought I knew my son. I turned back to him. It turns out, I was blind. Blinded by the hope that my son would be an honest, grateful man. What are you talking about? He shot back, jumping to his feet. I'm not some criminal. I needed to borrow some money. I was going to pay you back. Borrowed? I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air. You don't borrow without permission. You don't borrow to buy Swiss watches and vacations while your mother is still working. I opened the folder. I laid the bank statements on the coffee table. $8,200, Julian. Taken with an authorization I gave you for college emergencies 15 years ago. His face drained of color. I thought. You have money, Mom. You have your apartments, your savings. And that gives you the right to steal from me? The word landed between us like a stone. I didn't steal, he yelled. Stealing, I recited, my voice icy, is taking what does not belong to you without the owner's permission. That is precisely what you did. Fine. He threw his hands up, pacing. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Is that what you want? I'm sorry, Mom. Now please, let us stay. I promise I'll pay you back every cent. I watched this performance, this collapse of arrogance into desperation, and I felt nothing but a deep, hollow sadness for what we had lost. The saddest part, Julian, I said, isn't the money. The money is just paper. The saddest part is that you destroyed my trust, and without trust, there is no family. He stopped, his eyes pleading, the same eyes from childhood. But he wasn't a child. He was a 35-year-old predator. Mom, please. His voice broke. I messed up. I know it. Give me a chance to fix this. Claire. Claire has nothing to do with this. You can't put her on the street. Ah, Claire. I raised an eyebrow. You didn't seem too concerned about the consequences for her when you were spending my money on $2,000 handbags. I reached back into the red folder. I pulled out another document, a transcript of the call I had overheard. I want you to read this, I said, handing it to him, out loud. His hands trembled as he took it. His eyes scanned the lines. Mom, read it, I commanded. He swallowed, his voice a raw whisper. I already canceled her card. Now she'll have to call me and beg. It's time she learns who's in control here. The old lady doesn't even check her statements. He dropped the paper as if it were burning him. I didn't mean that. I was just angry. I was just talking. Angry about what? I interrupted, stepping toward him. Angry that your 68-year-old mother still had control of the money she earned. I stood directly in front of him. Let me explain something. I am not weak. I survived the death of the love of my life. I worked for 40 years. I raised a child alone. None of that is weakness. What you confused with weakness, Julian, was unconditional love. But it turns out, even that has a limit. He did the last thing I expected. He fell to his knees, literally, clasping his hands in a pathetic, theatrical plea. Mom, I beg you, forgive me. I'll get therapy. I'll change. Please, don't leave us homeless. Claire is pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. Pregnant. A grandchild. The one thing I had dreamed of for years. I stumbled back, and I saw it in his eyes. He knew it. This was not a confession. It was a weapon. The final, desperate card played to manipulate me. I saw my future. If I gave in now, I would be his hostage forever. The grandchild would be the new leverage. Get up, I ordered, my voice trembling but firm. Mom, please. I said, get up. He slowly rose, wiping his tears. I looked at him, searching for the boy I loved. He was gone. Congratulations on the baby, I said finally, the words tasting like ash. I hope you are a better father than you have been a son. The eviction stands. You have until 11 p.m. tonight to remove your belongings. After that, the locks will be changed. The hope in his eyes died, replaced by something dark and venomous. You know what? He snarled. You're right. I'm not the son you expected. But you're not the mother I thought you were. A real mother would never leave her son on the street with his pregnant wife. You're a bitter, lonely old woman. And you're going to die bitter and lonely. The words were meant to destroy me, and they hurt. God, they hurt. But I had already cried my tears. Maybe, I replied, my voice chillingly calm. Maybe I will, but I would rather be alone with my dignity intact than accompanied by someone who only sees me as an ATM. Now, get out of my house. He stared, disbelieving. "This isn't over," he threatened. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll sue you." "You're free to try," I nodded. "My lawyer, Marcus Thorne, will be delighted to present the evidence of financial fraud, identity theft, and your little plan to make me beg. We can even add this conversation where you tried to use your unborn child as emotional blackmail. You decide." His body trembled with rage. Then, something in him broke. The fight drained away, leaving only hollow defeat. "You're going to regret this," he whispered. He walked to the door, yanked it open, and turned one last time. "When that child is born, don't expect to meet him. You chose your money over your family. Now live with that." The door slammed shut. The sound echoed in the sudden, deafening silence. My legs gave out, and I collapsed back into the green velvet armchair, the red folder clutched to my chest like a shield. And I finally wept for the grandchild I would never know. The days that followed were a gray fog. A week later, a call came from an unknown number. It was Claire. "Elora," she whispered. I'm leaving him. I'm going back to my parents in Denver. Since we left, he's not the man I thought he was. He blames me for not convincing you. We're sleeping on a friend's sofa, and all he talks about is revenge." A chill snaked down my spine. "Revenge? He's been posting horrible things about you on social media," she rushed on. "Telling everyone you abandoned your pregnant son. He threatened to go to your old office, to humiliate you publicly." 2 days later, she appeared at my door. She looked exhausted, her eyes ringed with shadows. She handed me a paper bag. Inside was the designer handbag, the earrings, the scarf. "I don't want them," she said. "They were bought with your money." I was touched by the gesture. Before she left, she hesitated, then pulled a small, blurry photograph from her wallet. I thought, "You might want to see this." The first ultrasound. I took it with a shaking hand, a tiny, flickering shape. "My grandchild. He's beautiful," I whispered. "Elora," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "This baby is innocent, and I hope, someday, you can meet him. Because every child deserves a grandmother like you." After she left, I took the items she returned to a consignment shop. The $3,000 they fetched, I deposited into a new savings account. An account in the name of Arthur Jr., if it was a boy. Life settled into a quiet, bruised rhythm. I rented the Chestnut Avenue apartment to a young couple. I took on some consulting work. I met my friend Diana Wells for coffee. I told her the whole story. "Elora," she said, taking my hand. "You did the right thing. Loving your children doesn't mean you have to let them destroy you. It means teaching them that actions have consequences." Her words were a balm. 3 months later, Claire called from Denver. "It's a boy, Elora. I named him Arthur Jr., after your husband. I want him to grow up to be a good man, like you always said he was." My joy was short-lived. A week later, a call from a lawyer. Julian was suing me. Wrongful eviction. Emotional distress. The trial was in February. Julian sat across the courtroom, his eyes cold and hard. His lawyer painted me as a cruel matriarch. Then, Marcus stood up. He presented the bank statements, the transcript of the phone call, and a sworn, notarized affidavit from Claire in Denver detailing Julian's deception and her support of my decision. The judge, a man named Alistair Bain, did not deliberate long. "This court finds the eviction was not only legal but entirely justified," he announced, his voice booming. He looked directly at Julian. "The law does not protect adult children who financially exploit their parents, Mr. Delgado. Your lawsuit is dismissed. Furthermore, you are ordered to reimburse your mother the $8,200 you misappropriated, plus legal costs." Julian's face was a mask of disbelief. After, as we filed out, he blocked my path. "I hope you're happy," he hissed. "You won. You got your money. I hope it was worth losing your son." I looked into the eyes of the stranger who wore my son's face. "I didn't lose my son today. Julian," I said, my voice soft but steady. "You lost your mother the day you decided my only value was in my bank account." 3 months later, I was on a bus to Denver. Claire had called. "He's here, Alora. Arthur is here." Claire's parents welcomed me with open arms. And then, Claire placed him in my arms. 7 pounds of new, innocent life, my grandson. "Hello, Arthur," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm your grandma. I'm going to tell you all about the man you were named after." His tiny fist curled around my finger, and in that moment I felt a hope I thought had been extinguished forever. It has been a year. Julian filed for bankruptcy. I will never see the $8,200. It doesn't matter. The money was never the point. I sit in my green velvet armchair. The white porcelain cup is warm in my hands. On my mantel, next to a photo of my Arthur, is a photo of Arthur Jr., smiling with 2 new teeth. Claire and I talk every day. She is moving closer, so I can be the grandmother this child deserves. I lost a son, the son I thought I had, anyway. That grief is a scar I will carry. But I gained a daughter, I gained a grandson, and I reclaimed myself. I learned the most painful lesson of my life, that unconditional love, when it is not met with respect, is not a virtue, it is a form of self-destruction. I learned that setting a boundary, even if it feels like an amputation, is not cruelty, it is survival. And I learned that even in the ashes of the deepest betrayal, something new, something brave, something better, can find a way to grow.